everybody. Anyone watching this? This is my friend Edgar. He's a doctor of logic who diagnosed me as autistic. So,
Great.
welcome. Thank you. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about Mexican humanism because you told me some interesting stuff when we were hanging out a couple weeks ago about it's like a repackaged neoliberalism. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I was saying, I'm not sure that I would phrase it like that, but I would say this new government just continues with the old politics, but with a new disguise. Yeah. So in that way, that sense, it's liberalism with a new disguise. Right?
Can you give me some examples? You did give me a few, but I'm sure that you can relate them better than I can recall them.
Yeah, AMLO is like the creator of this, the author of this new Mexican humanism. I even saw an hour ago some videos on the subject. So apparently every Thursday morning, they are trying to explain this new Mexican humanism. And they say that López Obrador is the original creator of this idea. Of course, inspired in some other authors we may be talking about. But yeah, Obrador was regent from the city in 2000, from 2000 to 2006. Yeah, he had this discourse and this narrative on working for the poor first. But in reality, he followed many of the neoliberal politics. For example, improve downtown, Mexico City downtown was really messy. It still is a little messy, but not so much. But it was like really chaotic and in many ways talking about walking there or in terms of commerce and so on. And his solution was to sell it, right? So he sold many buildings and the streets cannot be sold in Mexico, but the buildings, old buildings and so on, he sold it to Carlos Slim, who is the richest man in Mexico and his personal friend. And yes, so Slim he agreed to improve the face of downtown's face, like an uplift. And yeah, so it's like a classic neoliberal politics, right? Like, how can you improve something? Sell it to someone who wants to profit from it. And yeah, automatically, through competence, it will be better, right? It's like,
For sure. What
Hmm?
Claudia Sheinbaum is carrying on the same bait and switch, we'll say. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say so because she was also like regent from Mexico City, but from 2019, from 2023. And for example, she talked a lot about sustainability and caring for the environment and so on. But her main works, public works, for example, were for cars, right? New bridges and new highways and so on. But only 20% of people travel by car in Mexico City. The other 80% are like the working class who really can't afford a car. And she did almost nothing. Even the new line, the newest line of the subway fell and 26 people died.
Oh, geez.
Or lack of maintenance. That was in 2021. And she blamed the past administrations, but the past administrations were also from the club of Obrador and Ebrard, many others, who also call themselves like the new humanists. And yeah, it was because they didn't want to spend the money on the maintenance of the line. But yeah, the subway fell. And you can look for it, like a whole piece of the bridge collapsed and the subway was going, up. And yeah, the last two cars, the subway fell on the street. So yeah, 26 died and more than 100 injured. Yeah. And that was built by Marcelo Ebrard, who was after Obrador, the regent from Mexico City and like his right hand, right? Yeah. So just one example. We could talk about that.
Well, thank you. It says it's interesting from my perspective because I do see Sheinbaum as being a little bit more heavy-handed. She's very tough in her rhetoric when communicating with Donald Trump, for example. In fact, just today I saw the letter she wrote regarding. So the letter itself concerned, hey, why are you coming down so hard on Mexico for our drug problem? I mean, for our cartels. It's actually the United States that has a problem with the fentanyl that you're trying to stop. And
Mhm.
also, 70% of the illegal weapons we seize come from the United
Mhm.
States. And I don't think she added this part, but all the cartels are just CIA subsidiaries anyway. So why are you blaming us?
Yeah.
She's also, for example, just trying to do a little bit of background research on this. Although it seems like Trump is trying to step up his game, or rather just making more threatening remarks. We're going to send the military down to Mexico and try to take
Mhm.
care of their problem for them. Although
Mhm.
she's not, she's being tough in terms of opposing that. She's also making statements like, hey, we're not going to let any migrant caravans get to the border anymore. So you don't need to worry so much. You don't need to send your military down here.
Yeah.
That's just the trend? Is that right? I don't recall AMLO being so heavy-handed or trying to put on such a tough front. But
Right. That's interesting because, for example, AMLO, before he became president in 2018, he
Mhm.
wrote a book. He wrote a book. We know they don't write anything. They just very ghost writers. But he wrote a book called "Hey Trump, Oye Trump." So apparently, in that book, he like states you can't treat Mexico like this. We are not like your backyard and blah blah blah.
Mhm.
But right when he became president, and Trump was a real president, one of the first international travel and one of the only ones he did was to the United States. He visited Trump and they were in really good contact. So they speak of each other as friends. Um, so he really calmed down a lot. Like he tried to show that to the public they were friends. And I think that was an attempt to explain why he wasn't going to be so tough in his discourse narrative. But in reality, of course, yeah, that's the thing. He agreed almost immediately to become, I think they call it third safe country or second safe country, like the country where migrants who are detained are turned back. Even if they're not from Mexico, like all the people from Central America and South America, and IT and so on, who come to Mexico and then try to cross the border, they return to Mexico. Mexico agreed to that. And yeah, that's like the same with she. Like she's being really tough, but saying, oh no, the migrants are not coming anymore. They're not even getting to the north. So don't worry. So like, I just think, I guess they are just like their friends. Surely and they agree to, like Trump wants to maybe to project this stuff, image and so on. And regarding immigration, and yeah, of course, Sheinbaum wants to establish that she is in continuance with Obrador's, AMLO's government, because I think right now in these first months of her presidency, she's trying to keep the fan base that Obrador built, which is really big and really strong and really loyal to Obrador. So she's trying to make sure everyone feels here that she will continue with that, with his policy. But of course, she's not like in all aspects, mainly in the narrative aspect. I'm sure she will continue in that way, but she's rather different because, for example, she already went to the heavy G20, its reunion in Brazil. AMLO wouldn't do that. I think he waited a lot to make his first international travel. So he had a really conservative and discreet international policy. He talked with only few uh, leaders from other countries. And Sheinbaum is more like a globalist, more openly globalist. Mhm.
does seem that way. I saw that she met with Xi Jinping during the G20 meeting. I believe they were talking about
Mm,
opening the BYD factory and maybe just other stuff like that. That's interesting. I want to go back to the fact that you mentioned that Morena, like Sheinbaum, et cetera, have a large fan base. I don't
oh yeah.
know if it's just I am speaking to the wrong people, but whenever I speak to a taxi driver or somebody who's, just a very typical working class person, they
Yep.
express similar skepticism as you do. It's typically more along the lines of we don't like socialism. We think communism is bad, etc. And
And,
associate her and AMLO with that. Is it the
yeah.
same way in your area? Do people express even strong feelings either way?
Yeah, I would say that's a Mexico City thing, or maybe a city thing, because, for example, here's a rural area. Until now, I've been living here for 2 years, and I still haven't found a single person who speaks badly about Obrador. Like, people here really love him, and one can understand it. For example, my students, I am a high school teacher. My students work like that's illegal. Like, they're not supposed to work until they're 18 years old, but many of them work because they need to work. Their families are most of the families are poor here, and that's the most Mexico. That's representative, the majority of Mexico. And but since Obrador, that's they get a scholarship. They get money every certain months just for being students from public schools. And that really makes a significant change in their lives, because many of them don't have to work anymore. And those who still have to work, they at least get some support, economic support, to keep studying. Because the reality here outside the cities is that so many young people can't even continue with high school, and they start working like in really terrible conditions. So this little support the government gives, it's not much money, but it can make a difference, and has really helped a lot of people. So they're giving support for high school students, also for people working in agriculture, like for farming and so on. As I said, it's not a lot of money, but it's something, and a little money for really poor people is a big difference, right? So these are the kind of things that really annoy middle class and rich people, right? Because they think that this money only makes poor people lazier, and they will become even poorer and lazier, and so on. That is the classist narrative, right? But yeah, I really think, of course, some students like spend their money in stupid things. Of course, that's obvious, right? Like, they are teenagers. What else are they going to do? But many of them struggle even to pay like the public transportation for the school. So you can't, I think you can uh, ignore that when trying to explain why Obrador has such a big fan base. Just to finish this comment, when he was regent in Mexico City, he stated like policy also I don't know, how would you say that this giving money to people, the scholarship, but no, how else would you
Welfare, educational,
welfare? Of course, for elderly people, like for people 65 years old or older.
pension.
be- uh But it's something extra. Like, he invented that for the people in Mexico City,
Mhm.
like, and like extra to the regular pension, just for being 64 years old or older and living in Mexico City. You have a right to get, I think, like 1,000 pesos a month. And that increased year after year. And then they made it like a constitutional right. And then they made it national. And nowadays, like people 65 or older get this welfare. And it's higher than in 2000, 2004. I don't remember exactly that became a reality. But many people say that was the reason why he had such a big political base, because used public money to buy the people's votes, right? But yeah, of course, like other people, most people voted for him because of that, because they get money from these welfares. And well, you can criticize that, but I find it reasonable because pensions here in Mexico are laughable. They, people become so little money for working 35, 40 years in their lives. And they have almost no support after that. Yeah, extra money. Yeah, that explains it a lot. The famous social programs that the conservatives hate so much.
On that note, I'm curious, did that ever cause any budget crisis or anything? Did people feel like the public expense was getting out of control?
Not really. Like the conservatives said that would cause a problem, but it hasn't really caused any problem. And for example, the budget for next year includes these welfares for young people, for old people, for new workers. There's also a welfare, and yeah, it's a lot of money. But the justification from Obrador is part of the so-called Mexican humanism, and I have it written somewhere. Yeah, he says that the basic problem in Mexico, everyone says, like the diagnosis of all the problems in Mexico is corruption, right? The slogan from Obrador was, "We will fight corruption through austerity." So the idea is there's a lot of money in Mexico, and yeah, that's true. Mexico has a lot of money every year. And what Obrador did, in fact, in reality, was he gave so much less money to the public institutions. He got I don't know how would you say that in English, but yeah, he stopped the money flow so abundant and irrational to every institution, so that, yeah, corruption became harder. But it's still there. We all know it. But yeah, that was the idea. Yeah, he argued 2018 when debates before the election that he would get all that extra money from saving from corruption. And yeah, what he did was he disappeared many public institutions. He got the budget for many other institutions. And yeah, that's the way he can finance his social programs.
Does seem to have worked out pretty well. I'm just thinking right now, of course, for the United States, our Department of Defense, that would be a brilliant place to cut down the corruption, slash their budget, and create some more programs. Thank you very much. This is really good. It's a good primer, I think, in terms of, we'll call it cross-border relations. One thing in particular I wanted to ask you, though. I have a friend in Guadalajara who mentioned, in terms of Trump's very tough on the cartels rhetoric, he expressed, like, at this point, even though I am pretty opposed to governments in general, I would actually favor U.S. military intervention because the cartels are such a huge problem here. Does that resonate with you in any way? Is there some way maybe that Trump and Sheinbaum could cut a deal and the Mexican people would be happy with it or otherwise accepting of it because they would think, well, this is solving a major problem?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. It's hard for me to imagine that people would agree to such a thing. And it would be really hard to fit into the nationalist discourse or narrative that AMLO and Sheinbaum have. And mainly in contrast with the previous governments who were really globalist and anti-nationalist, and not so much anti, but neutral, or not talking about nationalism or patriotism, not strongly at least. So I think it could be really hard. I guess they would have to do it like more secretly or silently, or maybe disguise the North American military Mexican military so that people wouldn't notice or something like that, something crazy. But yeah, I think it would be really hard to accept, even in the face of even selling the ideas. Yeah, we will have security like this. Nah, people wouldn't buy it. I don't think so. But yeah, maybe some covert way of doing it could work, maybe. But yeah, like people in Mexico are really skeptical of police and military forces. And of course, much more of foreign military or police forces that would be fake.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard to imagine. Yeah, who knows? Uh, I know people, I'm not particularly like politically informed, but I know people, Mexican friends who uh, read a lot about it and they're like really different opinions on this idea. Like some of them think it would really be possible and some of them think it wouldn't. So who knows? Who knows?
All right. Thank you very much. Do you have any predictions or otherwise just a feeling on where the Sheinbaum presidency will go? Will
Mhm.
this perhaps turn into a one-party communist dictatorship under Morena or something?
Yeah, I laugh about these ideas because man, this Morena. I know many people think they are socialists and communists, but they are so far from being real, really like having this kind of policy. Yeah, these welfares are not that much of a big deal. But I think based on her government in Mexico City and her relationship with AMLO and so on, so she has far less, how could I phrase it? I think this the really strong government or radical or different government from Morena was with Obrador. I think after him, no one in a few decades will have such strongly different policies. So I guess Sheinbaum will just continue with this same policy of improving the country or trying to make progress in the country through private investment, through making people work for bad income, for bad payments, like Obrador and like many before them. Like she's opening up like the many areas of the country for investment, for foreign investment. And yeah, so I think she will just continue with that, maybe more globalist than Obrador, maybe more in line with these international uh, rules or new values or norms that are trying to be instated. She's more pro environment than Obrador. Obrador he built a new, how do you call that, where you process petroleum and make it gasoline and so on. That's many criticize lately. That's old technology, old energy. We need to make new things and so on. I say Bam is more into that and to that trend. And yeah, just continue the narrative, the fourth transformation, Mexican humanism narrative, and still and stay and keeps reinforcing liberal policies. I guess that's what we.
Now that does lead me into one more specific question. I was
Mhm,
pretty excited last year when Mexico was planning under AMLO to join BRICS, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and then they backed off. I assume because of pressure from the United States, but I'm not sure about that. Uh,
mhm, mhm,
with these developments under Sheinbaum, specifically her interest in green energy and the new BYD electric car factory that will be opening, which would be
mhm.
that sounds like a smart business deal after AMLO nationalized the lithium. Do you
Yeah.
think that there's any good possibility that Sheinbaum will be moving in the direction of BRICS again? Like, I remember that she invited Putin for
Mhm.
her inauguration, for example.
Yeah. Mm, this like yeah, the pressure from the USA government has always been there for Mexico, like since the independence. And yeah, it's hard to imagine and Mexico making such a move, being Mexico, being the South neighbor from the United States. Yeah, I really don't think so. But the truth is that I'm not really that good at political analysis because I'm not really one of those things. I just make my opinion on what I read in the news and so on. But it's really hard for me to. It's really hard. Yeah.
I think so. Maybe it is just a commitment to democracy in some way, but I like getting the opinion of people on the ground. Maybe I just don't have any access to the decision makers, right? But
Uh-huh.
still, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks, man.